Okay, good evening. Once again, thank you, Rabbi, for hosting. Thank you to everybody who joined. So we're holding in today's shiur, we're holding a new sugya, so that's good. Holding Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 lines from the bottom, Daf Nun Zayin Amud Beis, where the Gemara brings down from the Mishnah, quoting the two dots, Nafla Lagina Venanis, Mishalemis Mashanenis. Before we get into today's sugya, let's just remember a few key principles and a few ideas that we learned in our Mishnah. The general rule is that if you're an einus, if your animal damages and you're an einus literally means force, but it means it was, an accident, it was beyond your control. It was einus, you're going to be patur. That's what the Torah holds you patur. And if you were a pesheya, if you were negligent, you were careless, you weren't careful, then you're going to be chayiv. You're going to have to pay whatever the damage is. That's the general rule. So the Mishnah had two cases. One case was you're walking with your animal in the street and naflo the gina. It fell, so which is an einus. So in that case, you're going to be patur from paying mashi zika, from paying for the damage, because it was an einus. The next case in the Mishnah that we didn't quote here, but it's going to come up in today's Gemara, and it's important to contrast it. The next case in the Mishnah is going to be yarda kedarka, that the animal didn't fall, there was no einus. You weren't watching your animal properly, you let it go, it was yarda kedarka, it went down into your friend's field, and it ate up, and it's going to pay ma'aseh hizika. So again, we have two dinim. We have the nafla case, which is an einus, and you're patur from paying ma'aseh hizika, and we have the yarda case, where you're a pesheya and you're chayiv to pay ma'aseh hizika. That was the general rule. B'chal einsim, you have einus and pshia. In our Mishnah, there was something very, very unique, if you remember, that when in the case of nafla, which is an einus, you're patur from paying ma'aseh hizika, but we tell you, we're on Nun Zayin Amud Beis, 9 lines from the bottom. But we tell you that even though you're patur from paying mashizika, and even though you're an einus, you have to pay a little bit. Pay chach epis. What do you have to pay? You have to pay ma'ashenenis. You have to pay the hana that you had. So what was the example we gave? Let's say an animal falls, so it's an einus, and it lands on very, very expensive crop, and it eats up asparagus, and it's worth $50 what it ate up. Now, to pay if you have to pay mashizika, like had it been yarda kedarka, you pay $50. That's what the damage is. But if you're patur from paying mashizika because you're an einus, the Mishnah says you have to at least pay mashanenis. The animal had a free meal. What does it usually cost to feed your animal? It costs $1 or $2? What does animal food cost? Teven or whatever they feed the animal. So pay at least those $2 or those $3, whatever it's going to be. So you pay mashanenis. So there's those are the two cases in our Mishnah. So now our Gemara is going to quote the Mishnah, the case of Nafal Gina, and then Rav is going to say, a lot of times on Meirayim, they say that the Mishnah is talking about in a certain case, right? They qualify the Mishnah. They say it's only in this case. So Rav is going to say something, and I'm going to have a hard time understanding it. So let's see it inside. Nafal Gina, we learned in our Mishnah that if the animal fell into the Gina, so it was a case of an einus, venenis, and then it went ahead and had a na. So your taka pater, I'm adding these words in, but that's pshat. Your taka pater from paying mashi zika. However, mishalemis mashanenis, you should at least pay for the little hana that you had. Comes the Gemara, Amar Rav, and Rav says, by the way, the Mishnah is talking about bin echbeda, period. Right there goes a period. The Mishnah is talking about that what we're talking about is that the animal fell on crop, and the crop cushioned the fall. So the animal crushed whatever was there, whether it was tomatoes there, or wheat, or corn, whatever was there, the animal fell, like a clop, and it smashed whatever was right under the animal, and that crop was a big hana for the animal, because without it, the animal might have died, might have broken more bones. It served as a hana for the animal. That's what the Mishnah is talking about, that you're chayiv to pay mashanenes for the nechbita. So right now, the Gemara is going to wonder, Rav is trying to say something, right? He's trying to say that the Mishnah is talking about ben nechbita. So what are we going to think? So the Gemara is going to wonder, what about achla? What's if after it falls, it starts eating? What should it then be? So to think that Rav means the nechbata you pay mashanenes, but achla you're chayiv mashizika, for sure not. You should be more chayiv for achla, for sure not, because it's a case of einus. It can be chayiv. So what's Rav stressing, that benechbata you pay mashanenes? The Gemara right now is going to assume that Rav actually holds that when it's for the nechbata you pay mashanenes, and for achla you pay zero. You pay $0. That's what we're assuming now for a minute. And so that's Zakti Gemara. But if it ate, even mashanenis it shouldn't pay. It's going to pay 0, 0. It's going to pay absolutely nothing. That's what we're going to think. Maybe that taka works. Because maybe Leimer Rav L'Tamei, we're going to say that Rav is going according to his reason. Now we're going to take a little pause. What's his reason? So we have to bring down a separate Mishnah that we learned earlier in Daf Mem Zayin. So not on Perek Hakones, but it's earlier on Daf Mem Zayin in this Masechta. It's an earlier Mishnah. And we have to see over there, also Rav says that the Mishnah is only talking about a certain case. And we're going to try to say that maybe Rav over there, Rav over here is L'Shitase. But right now we're assuming for a minute that when Rav says that Nechbeta you pay Mashenenis, Achla you pay even nothing. That's what we're thinking. What's the Mishnah over there? The Mishnah over there is a case where somebody has a basket of payros, and he illegally, without permission, goes into his friend's field and he puts the payros down. Okay, so we have the Baal HaPeiros and the Baal HaSoda. And the Baal HaPeiros goes in and he puts it down in the Baal HaSoda. The Baal HaSoda has animals there. He's also a Baal HaBehema. He has an animal. And the Mishnah doesn't say what happened. The Mishnah just says that if the animals had a hezek on the payros, then the Baal HaPeiros is chayav to pay. And if I go into your farm and I put fruit down and then your animals get hurt on it, I have to pay. That's what the Mishnah says. Doesn't say how it got hurt. Comes Rav, and Rav says as follows: when are you mechuyev to pay for the damage? The animal tripped on it. The animal slipped on it. I put a hezek there. You tripped. But if I put the payros down and then the animal came and ate it all up, then the animal got sick because it got a stomach ache, it wasn't the right food for him, or whatever it is. In that case, Rav says you're going to be patur. Rav says on the Mishnah. Says when is the Mishnah like a honey mili? When is the Mishnah going to say chayiv only if the animal tripped? But if the animal ate it, you're going to be patur. Why? There's a svara. There this gebeten to eat. Nobody asked it to eat my food. You ate it up. You hurt yourself. It's your problem. But over there you have the svara. It's called hayel. It should have not eaten it. It's his problem that he ate it. So for a second, the Gemara wants to be medama, compare our case to that case. Over there, Rav said you're patur when the animal ate it because you say hayel shaloi seichel. So here also the animal will be patur from eating because you're going to say the animal should have never eaten it. Hayel shaloi seichel. Nobody asked it to eat. Right? So for a second, it seems similar. Over there, when an animal eats and gets damaged, it's patur because hayel shaloi seichel. So over here, when the animal eats and damages, also it's going to be hayel shaloi seichel should be patur. That's what it's going to look like. But the Gemara is going to immediately say, I'm saying the Baal Pen, then we'll go inside. The Gemara is going to immediately say, how can you compare it? Over there, the animal ate up your fruit and the animal got damaged, it hurt itself. So we say, listen, I'm not mechuyev to pay you. Nobody asked you to play with this. Nobody asked you to touch it. You hurt yourself. So I'm going to be patur. But here, my animal ate your fruit and damaged you. I can't say, my animal fell, right? And it's eating up your field. I can't say, oh, sorry, I didn't want it to eat. What do you mean didn't want it to eat? The whole thing in the head, it works that if your animal went and ate up somebody else's property, you're responsible for what your animal does, right? And if it's oinus, you're going to be patur for what your animal does. But that, to compare this Gemara to that Gemara makes no sense at all. But we're back to trying to understand what did Rav say? Because Rav said that our Mishnah is talking about nechbeta. It seems to imply that achla your patur. For a second, we say, okay, so maybe achla your patur because of hayel shaloi seichel. But right away, we say no, that makes no sense. So what is Rav saying? We'll get to that in a minute. But let's do the part that we did inside. So we'll go back to Aval. Zakti Gemara Aval. What do you want to say? That achla, that if the animal after it fell, it ate. Afilu mashanenes eina mishlam, is that it pays zero? Leimer Rav Tamei. Perhaps you'll have to say this works well with Rav's opinion. The Amar Rav says over there in Daf Mem Zayin, hayel shaloi seichel, that the animal should have not eaten. Keiner tis nish gebeten to essen. The where are we holding? The Amar Rav Asam. The Amar Rav hayel shaloi seichel. Zakti Gemara Amri. The Bnei Yeshiva said, Hachi hashta. Really now? What's for it like as das? Aim or the Amar Rav. When did Rav say the svara of hayel shaloi seichel? Hasam, only in that case. He said hayel shaloi seichel. Heichad di'is askahi, that the animal damaged herself. The matzi amarle mari de peidi, that the balabas of the peiris could tell the balabehema, loy mishalamna, I'm not paying you. Hayel shaloi seichel, the animal should have never eaten my fruit. It ate my fruit, it got damaged, I'm not responsible. To say that an animal who damaged other people, that it's going to be patur from paying because of the svara of hayel shaloi seichel, there's no havim that Rav should say such a svara. Me, Amar, would Rav say such a thing? It doesn't make sense. So therefore, Zakti Gemara, Ella, rather, the Gemara is going to say what Rav means. Really, Rav means that when the animal's not flawed, it's a case of oinus, and there's a nechbita, and right, it crushes the crop and it saves the animal, and then there could be achla. So two things could be happening. There could be a nechbita and an achla. Really, you pay mashanenis on both. Rav was not trying to say that on nechbita you pay mashanenis, but that on achla you pay zero. No, really you pay on both. Rav was only telling us the chidush one. The fact that you pay for achla, that makes sense. It's a oinus. The din is, if you don't know, you pay at least mashanenis. Nechbita was the chiddush. And Rav was telling us that you pay even nechbita. Make believe that Rav didn't say benechbita, but make believe Rav said even nechbita. Why is it even? Because there's a svara thing that by nechbita you should pay zero. For the crop that saved the animal from dying, saved the animal from breaking, that you should pay zero for that. There's a svara to think that. And therefore, I was saying, no, you're not going to be completely potter. You have to pay at least mashanenis. But for the achila, of course, you pay mashanenis. That wasn't even a shaila for Rav. Rav was saying that even echbata you're going to have to pay. Why did he have to stress even echbata? Because there's a famous halacha that the name of the halacha is mavriach harim enichsich chaveirei. That if I chase away, if I see a lion about to eat up your animals or to destroy your property, and I chase the lion away, I did a mitzvah. I can't come to you later and charge you and say, no, I chased away the lion for you. And you did a mitzvah, you were matzlamam and chaveirei, you don't get paid for it, you don't get $1. Even if you spend, let's say, 20 minutes doing it or whatever it is. So come to garnish, you don't get paid. Rashi says it's a mitzvah and you don't get money for it. So Rav is saying, you might think that when an animal falls, and the crop over there that crushed in the fall saved the animal's life, you might think that crushing, that crop that was damaged right there has a din of mavriach harim and right? And therefore, the guy, you're mechuyev to pay the guy zero. The animal ate, you pay mashanenis. But for the crop, you pay zero. That's what you might have thought. Well, that's why when Rav says, Amar Rav benechbata, he was stressing that even nechbata, you should pay mashanenis, and it's not mavriach harim and and we'll see why in the Gemara. But that's what Rav was here to stress. But achla, of course you pay mashanenis. So the way the Gemara is going to say this now, to explain this answer, the Gemara is going to say that Rav is talking in a oifen of loy mebaya ka'amar. Loy mebaya, the literal translation of loy mebaya is that it's needless to say. When something is needless to say, so that's what loy mebaya means. What would be an example of needless to say? Imagine a kid asks his mother, a third grader, Ma, can I cross the streets? And the mother will say, no, I don't let you cross any streets, not our block, not Union, not President. And even is needless to say, I don't let you cross Eastern Parkway, right? It's needless to say, but sometimes you say it, sometimes you stress it, right? But it's really a kal v'chaimer. Really, can make a kal v'chaimer. My mother doesn't let me cross Union Street or President. Kol sheken, I can't cross Eastern Parkway. It's a two-way street. But sometimes you say the needless to say that. So when something's loy mibaya, it's a kal v'chaimer. But when you actually say it in an oifen of needless to say. Here the Gemara means, let me buy you the Gemara means to say as follows. The achla, Rav didn't have to teach us about, because there was no chiddush. Rav was only here to teach us, it was needless for him to talk about achla, so he didn't. He actually didn't talk about it. He was only here to teach us about nechbeta, because nechbeta is the chiddush. By nechbeta, I may have thought that I'll actually be pater, and Rav had to teach us that you're going to pay at least mashanenis. Because even though it's einus, you can at least pay mashanenis for the nechbeta. But without Rav, we might have thought you pay zero on the nechbeta. But for the achla, there's no havamina that you should be pater. The chiddush is that even on nechbeta you have to pay. So that's on the bottom of the page. And for the Gemara, Ella, rather, this is what's going on over here. Loi mibaya ka'amar. Rav was saying it in a way of ein tzarich leimer, of needless to say. What was Rav saying? Loi mibaya achla. Needless to say, if the animal's going to fall and start eating this shalemus mashanenis, that of course it's going to pay mashanenis. That's of course. It's absolutely what the din is. Obviously. But in the case where the animal fell and the crop cushioned the animal and got damaged, you might have thought to say that this is a case of Mavriach Harim Nichsei Chaveirei, and the halacha is you can't take any payment, and that the owner of the field shouldn't pay any not even mashanenis. Kamash Malan comes Rav to teach us Amarav benechbeta, that by nechbeta you also pay mashanenis. But it's as if Rav said the following statement, that when the Mishnah says that nafla mashanenis, it's as if Rav said, Loi mibaya, if achla you pay mashanenis, even nechbeta you pay mashanenis. It's as if Rav said it like that. But he didn't actually mention He didn't actually mention the achla because it's the obvious case. Nechbeta is the chiddush. Why? Because you might have thought that as a din of mabriachari, and it doesn't. Kamashon that it doesn't. So here comes the Gemara, the Gemara ve'ema hachinami, and we should say taka azay. That's what it means. Zog taka azay. Maybe taka that the nechbeta should be treated like a din of mabriachari, and the guy should taka be and the bala behema should be putter from paying because the other guy did mabriachari for me and he did a mitzvah and he saved my animal. So it should be the same din like mabriachari taka. Rav is teaching us that it's not mabriachari, but why taka? Maybe it should be mabriachari. So the Gemara is going to give two answers why this case is different than the classic din of mabriachari minifsei chaveri. So the Gemara's question is just these two words, these three words. It's Rosh Hashanah. For the Gemara ve'ema hachinami zog taka zay. And for the Gemara, two things. Number one, Mavriachari minifsei chaveri midaitehu. Hi, lav midaitei. If you're Mavriachari minifsei chaveri, you volunteered to do it. You volunteered to do it. You saw a lion attacking your friend's field. He's like, you know, I'm going to go do a mitzvah. You submitted to doing this. You don't get paid back for it. Here, nobody asked me. I never volunteered for this. By force, you come and crush my fruit, say, oh, you did a mitzvah Mavriachari. Who said I'm interested? I never did it, right? Yeah, inami, or if you want, I could tell you, Mavriachari minifsei chaveri la Mavriachari minifsei chaveri less lebseida. The classic case of Mavriachari minifsei chaveri, you don't take a loss to your property. You just, spend your time, spend your energy chasing away the lion. There's no loss on you. Hi, is lebseida, but in this particular case, there's a loss, so you still need to pay back for any loss that may have happened. Right? When I heard the boys in this Gemara in class, I get into a conversation with them. What's if you're in trouble and you call Shiur or Shomrim, and the guy volunteered to come help you? Now he got hurt. Could he later say, because of you, I got hurt? Right? Imagine right now I'm on the way home and I feel unsafe and there's a fight and I call Shomrim. They come and they save me, but they get hurt, right? Because they fought with the guy. Did the guy say no? He was Mavriachari. He volunteered to do this. He volunteered to do it, but now he got hurt. This Lipseda. Whatever. What's if he had to use something and he had to, I don't know, use a garbage can and now got damaged because he threw it? You can start having a good conversation. Got people thinking, what?
They have to use equipment.
Yeah.
Take a call.
Right, and they use up equipment. It's Islip Seda. So over there you could have a case of where there's Islip Seda, but it was Medaita. Here you have both things now. You have it's not Medaita and there was Ibseda.
You're taking someone to whatever emergency and you're getting a ticket.
You got a ticket or a car accident, right?
Person.
Exactly. Could you charge them? Could you not? Did they ask you? Did you volunteer to do it? So it could be in this sugya. I'm not pasking again in this Gemara, but just is what to think about. So this little sugya ends about Rav. So when the Mishnah said that nafla legina you pay mashanenes, Rav says it's on achla and it's also on echbeta. And we learn out that nechbeta does not have a din of mabriachari. Sai because nechbeta is lav midaitai, and sai because nechbeta is islip seda. Mashenkin a regular mabriachari is midaitai, and regular mabriachari is less leip seda. There's no pseda.
It's only the din. It's only one that makes sleep seva.
Yeah, that's what the Gemara here is saying. Only less leip seda. Now the Gemara wants to know. Okay, so the case in the Mishnah is that it's nafla, which is a case of einus, it fell, and that's why, because it's an einus, you pay the cheaper rate, mashanenes. Because remember, the next case is yard kedarka, where it's a pshi and you pay top rate, mashi zika. Gemara wants to know, how did it fall? What's when is it considered an einus? How did the animal fall? What happened? Right? It's einus. Kid comes to you and says, it was an accident. Something broke. How did it break? You were playing ball there, it broke by accident. Is that considered an einus? Did you break it mamish biyadayim? What's considered an einus? Hey, so for the Gemara, hey chinafal, how did the animal fall? How did the animal fall? What do we consider an einus that in that case you pay the cheaper rate? So there's a machlekes of Amirayim. Rav Kahana says, shehuchleka b'mei miraglav. The einus is that the animal slipped on its own urine. So the animal had to go, and while it's walking, the urine went on the floor, and it got slippery, and it slipped on its own urine and tumbled into the gina. Real einus. And Rava says, Shedechafta chaverta. We're talking about an einus where the animals are walking, and one animal, they do it to each other all the time. And it's einus. It doesn't mean you're not a good balabas, you're walking with your animals on the street. One animal pushed, elbowed the other one, kicked the other one, and pushed it, and then caused that the animal should fall into the gina. So that would be considered einus. We have two stories of what's considered an einus. So now the Gemara is going to analyze these two stories. One of them is a greater einus. It's much, much less preventable, which is like the pure einus. One of them is a shtickle preventable. So the Gemara is going to say that the one who holds that it's only considered einus in the extreme case, he's going to consider the one of pshia because it was a little bit preventable. But the one who says that even the one that's a little bit preventable is considered an einus, for sure the one that's not preventable at all, that one's for sure going to be considered an einus. So that's what the Gemara is going to say inside right now. Zakti Gemara, Man da Amar, according to the opinion, Shedechafta Chaverta, the Shedechafta Chaverta is considered as an einus. So Kosha came, you can make a Kavachaimer, how much more so, that the case of where it was not preventable at all, you have no way of knowing when the animal is going to need the bathroom and it slipped. For sure, he'll consider that an einus. If he considers the chafta an einus, he's going to consider huchlka for sure an einus. However, the other opinion, the flip it, is not like that. However, the opinion who said, now what's the einus in our Mishnah, that it's not in the case of shehuchlka b'meimi regla, by him, it's not going to be like that. By him, he's going to hold the chafta chaverta pshia. In the case of
why is Shiur?
Right now, the Gemara is going to say that if the animal pushes the pshia, why? In that case, you'll pay the top price of mashizika, the amar lei, because the Baal Hasada, who's down on bottom, is going to tell the Baal Behema whose animal toppled in, when you were passing by this narrow part of Rishus Rabbim, and this is obviously the situation here. The story is that there's a Rishus Rabbim that's a little elevated, and there's a place to fall down. You should have taken your animals in a single file line to prevent it from happening. And the fact that you didn't, you're considered a pshia. There's something you could have done about it. So, okay, one opinion holds, no, that's normal. You walk by, animals push each other to einus. So if he holds that's einus, for sure, that's for sure. But the other way is, no, according to the opinion that what's the einus of a Mishnah, he obviously wants it to be a pure einus. He's going to obviously hold that the chafta chaverta is considered a pshia because he's going to say, it was your responsibility to make sure to prevent this from happening. There's something you could have done about it. Take them over in a single file line, and therefore you're going to be chayiv mashi hizika, the upper rate. Okay? Now we're ready to move on to the next little shtickle. We're still going on the case of nafla. So far on nafla, we learned that it's what the din of nechbata is, and now we learned about how it fell. Now we're going to talk about another din. What happens once it falls? It starts eating. Okay, it eats a little. Okay, it does nechbata, and it eats a little, and then it goes and it eats more and it eats more and it eats more. And there's a whole field over there. So it's all weird. You pay this cheaper rate of mashinenis. At what point do you become responsible that your animal's damaging and you start paying mashizika? At what point does that happen? That's what.
How long?
And how long now? And then only for the piece that it falls and eats right away, you're putter. Then if it goes to the next piece, you're going to be chayiv. Or maybe as long as it's there and it's parting the whole day, it's going to be putter. Only once it leaves and comes back, it's going to be a machlekes we're going to see inside right over here. That's the next little shtickle that we're going to do. So Zakti Gemara, Amar Rav Kahana says as follows: Lo yishanu, the din is nishke learned gevarim, that you're putter, that you're putter from paying mashizika, and that you only pay mashanenis. In other words, Lo yishanu, the din that you pay the cheaper price was not taught ela ba'isaruga, only in that shtickle, that row, that place right where it fell. You're going to be putter. Avol maruga aruga. Once the animal starts having a party and going from one aruga to the next aruga to the next aruga, mishalemis mashizika, you have to pay top price then, because you should have gone and got your animal back out, and if you didn't, you're going to be chayav. That's one opinion. Rabbi Yehoshua is going to be much more makel right now. Rabbi Yehoshua is going to argue Rav Kahana, and he's going to say, even if the animal went from one aruga to the other aruga, even if it stayed there for the whole day, because it initially fell there in a way of a pure einus, and you didn't send it there, so then you're going to be putter from paying mashizika until until it leaves that property and you knew about it, and it went back to that property and you knew about it, and then it continues to eat. That's when we're going to start charging you mashizika. Up until then, you're going to get the lower rate of mashanenis. Wow. Now, you do need to remember that we learned on the first page of Perek Hakones that our dvarim atayra miyata b'shmirasan, The Torah said you're not so responsible like you think. We make it more lenient, and one of them was Shein Verega, which is this case of the animal trampling on your food or eating your food. We said you only chayiv if it's mamish and a pshia dekaway. It's in a way of the shilach as beira, if you remember the Gemara that we learned, or to beer b'steyacher. And we say you only chayiv as if you manually like took the animal and made it do it. Only then you're chayiv. So therefore, Beichanan holds if the animal fell in with the einus and it purely landed there with einus, as long as it eats and eats and eats and eats, it still gets that exemption. You didn't do b'shilach as beira. You're still going to pay the cheaper rate. Only once the animal leaves and comes back, and you knew about all that, that's when you're going to start paying the higher rate. As opposed to, he's much more makel. Rav Kahana held, no, only by Saruga we learned the din that you pay the cheaper rate. But Maruga Laruga, you're going to be chayiv to pay Mashi Zika right away. What?
You know, and you don't do anything.
Right, that's the machlekes. But everybody agrees that the initial fall, forget about the nechbet of which is not anymore, but even the eating, the initial piece, part of the iron is the animal, it's going to left, it's going to start eating. It's part of what it does. Shaila is what happens if it continues to have a little party over there. So that is the machlekes. But now the Gemara is going to just clarify, or Papa is going to clarify the language of Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua said that when are you going to start being chayiv? I mean, your putter could go from aruga to aruga to aruga, putter from Ashay Zika. When are you going to start being chayiv Ashay Zika? Only when it's going to be teitze v'sachzer ledas. It's going to leave the property and go back, and you knew about it, and then you're going to be chayiv. So it sounds like you're only going to be chayiv, like if you knew that your animal went back and you did nothing about it. So our Papa is going to say, no, we don't mean that it's teitze v'sachzer ledas. Only the teitze part has to be ledas. And he explains as follows. Once I know my animal fell in that garden and had a party, and now I know that happened and my animal left, right now I'm always chayiv if my animal goes back there, even if I don't know that my animal went back there. Not that I knew and I stayed home, did nothing. I don't even know. I'm always responsible because the rule is once the animal learns that there's food there, as the owner, you know your animal is going to keep on trying to go back. So because your animal once spent the whole day in someone else's field, you're right now mechuyev to provide to this animal a shmira ma'ula. You have to do everything in your power.
It's like a shtickle more for this.
You're pshia. It's a pshia. It's a pshia. He holds that you're going to be considered a pesheya that the animal managed to make its way back over there. So if the animal managed to make its way back, you're a pesheya, but you don't have to know that it went back. When Rabbi Yehoshua said teitze v'sachzer l'das, he meant teitze l'das v'sachzer. L'das is not going on both details. It's only going on the teitze part. Once you know the animal spent the day there and left, you know it's going to do everything to go back there, and therefore it's your responsibility to take good care of it. And that's what we're going to see inside right now. Amar Papa explains, Loi tema. Don't say that Rabbi Yehoshua means that should teitze l'das v'sachzer l'das. You need to have das. Side that you know the animal left that field and side that it went back there. No, you don't need the das on both parts. Ella, kivan shiyatzas l'das. Once you knew the animal spent the day there and it left, even if the animal goes back without you knowing about it, you're going to be chayiv mashi zika from now on. We consider you a pesheya, and you're going to be chayiv mashi zika the higher rate. Why? My time. What's the reason? The amar lei, because the bal hasada will tell to the bal behema. Even the yalfa, because your animal learned about my place, kol emas the mishtanta every single time Kol emas means every time the animal is going to want to be mishtamid and try to slip away. Lahat samrata, it's going to run to there. It's going to run to there because it learned that that's where the cookies are, right? So it's going to go there. So therefore, you're going to be considered a pesheya unless you give it a very good. You have to give it a shmir ma'ula. And if you don't give it a shmir ma'ula, in this case, you're going to be a pesheya. Fine, so that was the case of Nafla. What was the next case in the Mishnah, which the Gemara is quoting right now in the two dots? We're on the second wide line on Nun Ches Amud Aleph. Zakti Gemara, Yarda Kedarka Vihizika Mishalem Mashi Zika. If the animal went down regularly, it wasn't a Nafla, it was a Shia, you're going to pay top rate Mashi Zika. We have no questions on that case, but right now we're going to have a bite of Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah always has these interesting kind of questions. He was in Yeshiva, we have those students. They're always the what if. Every time I make an announcement, or every time a teacher teaches a sugya, what if? So what all the kavod, of course. Rabbi Yirmiyah is the Amayra who plays that role. And a lot of Gemaras will see Rabbi Yirmiyah says, what if? Just so you know, Masechas Bava Basra, they sent him out of the Beis Medrash because there was a halacha that if you find a bird within 50 amos of the shaivak, of the birdhouse, it belongs to that shaivak. And if it's out of the 50 amos, it doesn't necessarily. So he asked, what's if one leg is in and one leg is out? What would it be? They didn't like the question, they sent them out. So they did consider it a little bit too petty. But many other cases, you'll see across Shas, where Rabbi Yirmiyah is the one asking the what if questions. So Rabbi Yirmiyah has a question. His what if is like this: it was yard the kedarka, right? So if it's going to start eating, it's going to be chayav because it was yard the kedarka b'sheya, but it didn't eat. All of a sudden, the animal had to give birth, and when the animal gives birth, there's the water that comes out with the baby. So there's the meileda, and that meileda destroys the crop, and it's a pure einus. So on one hand, it went down b'pshia, and if it would go and eat right now and damage, it would for sure be chayav, no question about it. That's the din of the Mishnah. Yard the kedarka b'zika mishlamas mashi zika. L'payil, it damaged through its meileda. So what's the din going to be? What's the din going to be? So the Gemara is going to explain that there's a famous machlekes and shas if chilase b'pshia v'seif b'beinus if you're chayav or if you're pater. Did we discuss it once in one of the previous shiurim, or that was the seventh grade? I can't remember. So probably not either way. We're not going to get too much into it, but there's a famous machlekes and shas that's brought down all over. If chilase b'pshia v'seif b'beinus, if you're going to be chayiv or pater, right? So he's not asking. Rabbi Yirmiyah's question isn't what's the din of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus. If this was a case, if this was considered a case of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, then we know what the halach is. The halach is that it's a machlekes. The halach is that opinion is going to hold your chayiv and that opinion is going to hold your pater. Not what Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking. We're asking if this is considered a case of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus. Or maybe this case is considered kula pshia, it's considered one big pshia. That's what we're going to be asking over here. Now, according to the opinion that chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus is, according to the opinion that, give me 1 second, I just want to look inside. According to the opinion that chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus is chayev, I don't need to waste my energy to figure out if this is a case of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, or if this is a case that is considered a kula pshia. The outcome is the same, because he holds chayav. So if I consider it chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, what's the thing going to be? Chayav, because he holds that chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus is chayav. And even if I'm going to want to claim that this is not a case of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, in this case you actually consider a pesheya legamri, the din is chayav anyway, so you're not going to waste my energy. In other words, Rabbi Yirmiyah's shaila is not negayat us. The din will be chayav. When is a shaila negayat us? If it's considered a din of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, is if you're going to hold according to the opinion that holds pater. Because then, if I want to reckon this as a case of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, the din is going to be pater. But if I consider the case of kula pshia, the din is going to be chayav, and therefore it's important to know, according to that opinion, what will we consider this case? And the answer is going to be teku, that we don't know. So let's see it inside. Zakti Gemara, yard the gedarka v'zika mashamas mashi zika. Prakti Gemara, by Rabbi Yirmiyah. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks a question: what's if yard the kedarka went on regularly and it didn't eat? However, v'zika b'meileda, it damaged the crop with the meileda. Mahu, what will the din be? Are you going to be chayav or pater? The Gemara explains. Aliba demand amar chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus chayav. According to the opinion that chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, you're anyways going to be chayav. Loiti b'ilach. There's no shaila here because you're anyways going to be chayav in this case. Whether the outcome is that it's chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus or that it's one big pshia, no difference in din. Ki ti b'ilach. Then v'zayna shaila looks at there. When will it be negayat to answer Rabbi Yirmiyah's shaila? Ali, but demand amar chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus is pater. According to the opinion who holds that a case of chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus, you're going to be pater. What will the din be in that? According to that opinion, mi amrinan. Do we say chiva chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus pater? Do we say that this is a case? We're going to actually consider this as a case that the chila was a pshia and the seif was of b'beinus, and then aibazai don't be pater because they hold chilase b'shia v'seif b'beinus is pater. Or maybe we're going to say hacha kula pshia. Here, this case is not considered seif b'beinus; it's considered one big pshia. Why? Because kivan the kachazi the kreva leila meilad. Because you're the owner and you saw. It's different than meir glide. You don't know when your animal is going to use the bathroom. But if you take care of an animal, you know when your animal is about to give birth. You know it. You could tell. So because you saw the animal's kreva leila meilad. It should have watched it and been warned and been more careful with this animal. And it wasn't more careful. So don't say, oh, I had no idea it's going to give birth. What do you mean no idea? You had a good idea that it's going to give birth. And you know that when it's going to give birth, it's going to damage whatever's around it. So you should have been more careful. So is this a case of kula pshia? Or is this a case of chilase b'shia seif b'beinus? And according to the opinion that Tchilas B'Shiyah B'Seibaynis is Pater, it's an idea for us to have this answer. Because if it's a case of Tchilas B'Shiyah B'Seibaynis, then we'll be Pater, according to them. And if it's a case of Kul B'Shiyah, then you're going to be Chayav because it's Kul B'Shiyah. And the Gemara Ateiku is going to be Ateiku. When I learned the Gemara with the Talmudim, the mashal I like to give them is, what's if a kid gets up in the morning and he looks at, we haven't had snow in 2 years, but Amal, we had snow, right? Before global warming. So what?
Did mention. You mentioned.
Yeah, in one of the,
Shiur.
yeah. So what's if a kid gets up in the morning and looks out the window and there's a half an inch of snow, and he decides to take his bike to school anyway, and he comes to school and on the way he falls off his bike, and because of that, doesn't get hurt, whatever, and because of that he's late to school, and he comes to school and he say, "Why are you late?" And he says, "Because I fell off my bike." Right? So is that a good excuse? Now, obviously, we'll have Rahmanas on this kid. It's not. We're not getting. We don't have to be strict. But my point is, we were passing a din. Is that kid a Oines Nebach, he fell off his bike, or a Chacham? Why did you take your bike to begin with? Should have never taken your bike. You saw the snow on the floor. You had no business taking your bike. It's a Kula B'Shiyah. Or you're going to say no. It's Chilasi B'Shiyah B'Seif B'Oines. The Chilasi B'Shiyah was that he took his bike. Lapali didn't intend to fall. It was Oines that he fell. How are you going to look at this case? Well, Kula B'Shiyah in this case, right? So that's one way how to look at it. That it's Kula B'Shiyah in this case because you knew that it's Krivelei Lamelad. But that's just to bring out the idea where a kid can see that even though the poil was an itis, the kid fell and he fell off his bike. It's a case of Kula B'Shiyah. Here it's a little more nuanced. So the Gemara is not sure. It's Teiku, but that idea brings out that even when the ending is an itis, it was an itis that you should have had the foresight. You should have known that's coming, and it's your fault. You engaged in that behavior, and therefore it's considered a Kula B'Shiyah. In this case, the Gemara is taka unsure, and it's a Teiku.
Why is there being to us with shit? I'll just say,
Say again.
Why did we want to share? Why didn't you talk about
Huchlaka b'meileda?
Yeah. Is it Einus or not? What, like, his basic question, Meileda, Einus or not? So that's the point. Why bring in the whole class of share? Just add another parameter.
Let's think, because that's a good question. But if it was a huchlaka b'meileda, you're 100%.
Is it Einus or share? That's the question.
In the case of huchlaka, but but if it was huchlaka, that's a case of nafla. So you want to know if it's a einus or b'shiyah.
You don't have to bring in class of share. You just have to focus on it. Is it Einus or share?
Instead of going through this whole case over here.
Yeah, it's like irrelevant. I mean, not saying it is, I'm just saying that.
Right, why do we have to enter the whole thing that if, according to this one number, we don't have a question. According to this one number, we do have a question. Because if you would say just on that case, what would we think here? No, because maybe then the Gemara wouldn't have the opportunity to clarify that maybe if we just spoke about if Meilei is considered Einus of Shia, we wouldn't have the opportunity to clarify that in this case is it Tchilasai of Shia b'Seifi b'Einus, that it depends, and there's two ways to look at it, and it will depend. According to one opinion, it will make no difference. According to one opinion, it does. We won't have that whole. Maybe. Anyways, good question. Just want to stop on the word teiku for a second. So teiku literally means sublight ashayla. It's very important for the kids to. This is like one of the things where everybody knows the remez. A lot of people don't know the pshat. Everything entire is pshat, remez, drush side. Pshat is teiku sublight, like the word ka'i, like aikim, ukimta, stays. It remains a shayla. That's what teiku literally means. And how do you paskin when it comes to teiku? So usually, if it's like shaylas about. If it's mutter or asr or whatever, or machmer. And I believe if it comes to money things, you just like leave the money, whoever has the money keeps it. Like you follow other principles, like so teiku means to blight the shaila, and then the Bali halacha, like the Rambam, the Rif, and the Rosh, they have different rules how they'll paskin in a case of teiku l'para. We need to know the halacha, right? So blight the shaila, you're the rabbi in your town, you need to know what to do. So the poskim take care of that. But the remez of teiku is that this comes from the Tiferes Yisrael, the Mishnayos, and the remez is that teiku is Rosh Hashanah of Tishbi, Yitaretz, Kushis, V'Yabayis, that Eliyahu Navi, which has many names, including Tishbi, which means that he's going to answer all our questions. So Tishbi, Yitaretz, Kushis, V'Yabayis is the remez of the word teiku. The teiku literally means a sublime teshayla. Okay.
I grew up only with the Rams.
You learned the remez only, right? Exactly. I think I also grew up like that. Right, so the pshat is, that's what I'm saying, it's more than both.
That's the pshat.
That pshat is, right, that's it. Sometimes It's so unganam in the remez. It's like people only teach it like that. Now, take us about the shaila. The hint is we'll have the answer when Mashiach comes in Mitzvah. It's both true. It's nigla and it's remez. It's both parts of Torah. Both work. So now, if you go back to our Mishnah in the beginning of Perek Hakones, after we had all the cases, and we said sometimes you're pater, sometimes you're chayev, this times you pay mashi zika. Then the Mishnah said, "Kate, mashi zika." How do you pay mashi zika? So the Mishnah said, "Shamin beisa ba'isa sada." You look at a beisa in that field, kama isa yafa v'kama yafa, and basically over there, the Mishnah was teaching us you don't look at this little piece of land that the animal ate, this little 2x2 or 4x4. You don't just look at that little piece of land. You look at a whole beisa'ah, and you look at that beisa'ah. If you wanted to sell it and it was full of crop, now that same beisa'ah is missing some crop. What will the difference in price be? And obviously, that's a much cheaper rate for the mazik. You're going to charge the mazik for what the animal ate. It's going to be expensive. You're going to look at a whole beisa'ah and say a beisa'ah with completely full with corn. Oh, it's missing a couple of feet of corn. The price is going to be a minimal difference in price. What we're going to learn later in today's Gemara is that the Beisa'ah itself, how do you know what the price of the Beisa'ah is? The Beisa'ah itself has to be viewed as if it's 1 sa'ah and 60 sa'ah. Because it's very, very unusual to sell just a sa'ah. A sa'ah is a small piece of land. A sa'ah is land that's 50 by 50 amas. 50 by 50 amas is a shetach. That's an area measurement, 50 by 50 amas. But a piece of land that's 50 by 50 amas is called a beisa'ah because the amount of wheat that it produces is a sa'ah. But a sa'ah is a very, very small piece of land. For example, the Beis HaMikdash was, the Mishkan was a Beis HaSayim because it was 100 by 50. So it was twice 50 by 50, 2 squares. So 100 by 50. So it's called the Beis HaSayim, 2 sa'ah. But this is a Beis Sa'ah. So the Mishnah is going to learn that what the Mishnah taught us is you don't look at just. The Mishnah taught us a couple of things. Number one, if the animal comes and eats up the corn, you don't look at the corn price. You look at the field price. Right? Remember, we spoke about it when we learned the Mishnah. You don't say, oh, it ate 10 pieces of corn. Let's go to Roskin's and see what 10 pieces of corn go for. No, you look at the field. This field, what was it worth before? What's it worth after? In the field gufa, you don't look at just this piece. You look at the whole Beis Sa'ah. How much was this Beis Sa'ah worth if it was filled with corn? Now that it's missing some, how much is it going to be worth? Now, the price of the Beis Sa'ah itself, we're going to learn just a little in today's Gemara, hopefully, if we got to it, is that you look at 1 sa'ah and shishim sa'ah. That's how you know the price of a Beis Sa'ah. As if you were buying a land worth of shishim sa'ah. Whatever that price is, you divide it by 60. That's the price of 1 sa'ah. And the price of 1 sa'ah, you say, how much would this sa'ah be worth if it was full with corn or now that's missing, part of it is damaged. That's how you're going to look at it. But this idea that you're looking at the field price, you're not looking at the price of the fruit, and you're looking at the field price, and even in the field gufa, you're looking at amongst other parts of field, not just this piece itself. Where do we know that from? And where did the Mishnah sort of say make that up from? Where in the Torah does it say that when you pay mashi zika, we give you like this, agav sada rate? It's called agav karka. What? This it's not just the wholesale rate. It's the field price versus the product. It's a whole different way of measuring it, right? Like if we give a mashal with a house. If I damage your window, right? You could go and charge me what it costs to buy a window and install a window, which could be, a window could cost, $800, and to install it could cost $500 more. Or I could say, how much did the value of your house go down? It's $1 million house, one window missing, it might have not gone down at all. Or, if it was a $500,000 house and it's missing the front door, it's okay, it went down $500. It's not the full amount. So it's a very big deal. So we look at the field price, the agav sada, agav karka. So the Gemara is going to know, where do we get this from? We're going to learn it from Sukkim, obviously. So Zakti Gemara, we learned in the Mishnah, Kates and Mishalem is Mashi Zika. How do you pay Mashi Zika? And the Mishnah continues to say that you look at a field and you look at a Beisah, Kama Hoisa Yafa, Kama Hi Yafa. The Gemara, the Rosh Tevis here is Meina Hani Mili. Where do we know this from? And for the Gemara, Amar of Masna says the Amar Kra, because it says in the pasuk. There's an interesting lashon in the pasuk. When the animal goes to eat up your field, it says that it consumed a stay acher, somebody else's field. It's an interesting language. Usually the Torah would write that the animal ate up his friend's field. Why does it say acher? Malam, it comes to teach us sheshamin agav sada acher, that when it's going to come time to pay, the way we reckon the price is looking agav sada acher. Let's just keep our fingers on the place in the word acher. let's read the pasuk. You should have it in your Gemara. You see the whole pasuk over there on the side of the Torah. So it says over there, Chiyaver ish sada echarem, v'shilach is b'irai, and he sent his animal, ubier b'stei acher, and it ate up someone else's field. Meitav sedei mertav karmi yishalim. You have to pay from your idis. You have to pay from the best fields that you own. So it says b'bier b'stei acher. It doesn't say b'bier b'stei chaveirei. We learn out melamed shasham in al-gav sada acher. Now the rule is, whenever there's some interesting wording in the Torah, or some extra wording or interesting wording, that we learn something out of it, we can learn one thing out of it. So now we're saying that the Bir B'stei Acher is here to teach us the din Sheshamin al Gav Sada Acher. Correct, Gemara. How could you say that? We already used this pasuk to teach us a different din. Correct, Gemara. Hi Ubir B'stei Acher. This pasuk of Ubir B'stei Acher mi Baile La Fuki Rishus Rabim. We needed to teach us that your pater and Rosh Hashanah. The halacha is, if your animal eats up someone else's food, it's only if it went into their property and ate up their food. But if we're both walking on Kingston Avenue and you put your food down and my animal comes and eats it, I'm not responsible to pay for things that are left in Rosh Hashanah. So we already learned. So we learned Bir B'stei Acher. Why does the Torah have to say Bir B'stei Acher? That you're only chayiv if you're in the sada of your friend. But if you're in Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be pater. So this pasuk was already used to teach us that din. I jumped ahead. I already said the diuk of. So here's what the Gemara answers. So the Gemara, let me say it again inside. In fact, the Gemara, Hayya Bir B'stei Acher, this pasuk Bir B'stei Acher was already used up because Meibaili, we needed it to teach us Lafuki, to learn out from it that you're excluding Lafuki or Shasham to exclude Rosh Hashanah. And for the Gemara, no, and the Gemara, if so, if it was only here to teach us to exclude Rosh Hashanah, the Torah should have only written. The Torah should have said Bir B'stei Chaveirei. So we learned Bir B'stei Chaveirei, you're going to be chayiv. Rosh Hashanah, you're going to be pater. We don't just have here that the Torah says Bir B'stei Chaveirei. We have also not just that the Torah added B'stei Chaveirei. We added it. Said an interesting lashon of B'stei Acher. So we're going to learn out two things. It could have said B'stei Chaveirei, which would exclude Rosh Hashanah. We're going to learn that out. And from the fact that the language is interesting, and it says Stei Acher, not Stei Chaveirei, that's going to teach us a second thing, that you're also pater, that you also pay agav karka. Binami, or if you want, I can answer you, instead of saying that I'm learning it out from the interesting language, I can find you an extra letter here in this pasuk. Inami, it should have said Stei Acher, ubir Stei Acher, and the animal consumed someone else's field. My bistei acher. Why did it say ubir bistei acher? The base is to tell you sheshamin agav sada acher that you pay by shatzing up, opposed to sada acher. So there was two answers to the question of how could you learn two things. We don't know that this pasuk is here to teach us that you're not chayiv in Rosh Hashanah. That's why it had to say ubir b'stei acher. It couldn't skip that. It couldn't just say ubir. It has to say where it happened because you're only chayiv in stei acher. You're pater in Rosh Hashanah. So how could I also learn out for the word from the ubir b'stei acher how you pay the shaman agav sadaka? How could you do it? So the Gemara offered two answers. Either because of the language is interesting, even though these words are extra, it teaches me about Rosh Hashanah, but the language is going to teach me how to pay, or from the extra letter of b'stei acher. Correct, the Gemara. Once we're learning out that the Torah said ubir b'stei acher to teach us how to pay. That's why it said this language. So maybe that's now. How do we know the Rosh Hashanah then? Maybe it's only for that. Maybe vice versa. Maybe now I should think that it's only to learn how to pay. Where's the diok to teach me that it's also the Rosh? Where do you know that from? Correct, the Gemara. Now ve'ema kuli lach yuda asa. Perhaps I should now think that the whole pasuk ubir b'stei acher only came to teach me that it's for how do you pay b'stei acher lafukim rishus rabim minalon to exclude rishus rabim. How would we know it? So the Gemara gives an interesting answer. I'll read it inside, then I'll explain. And for the Gemara, im kain, if so, im kain, if so, that this pasuk was only here to teach us how to pay, right? It wasn't here to teach us about where the animal ate, because it was only here to teach us. You want to suggest that it was only here to teach us where to pay. The Torah should have written the stei acher word where the Torah tells you to pay. The Torah ends off meitav sadeu meitav karmi yishalim. That's actually quoting the pasuk. The Torah should have said b'stei acher. That meitav sadeu meitav karmi yishalim b'stei acher. That how should you pay your meitav sadeu meitav karmi based off the stei acher? But it's not how it says it. It's not where it says the word stei acher. That's false. We're making up a pasuk here. It's not how it says it. Lamalei de kasri rechamana gabi ubir. The Torah says it by the story, by the case. Ubiyah b'stei acher, meitav sedeh, meitav karmi yishalem. Shema min hatarti, we learn two things. So according to the end of the Gemara, we're learning out from the placement in the pasuk and from the language in the pasuk. If the pasuk was only here to teach us that you pay b'stei acher, then the pasuk would say the story that my animal ran into a field and it ate and whatever. We're not learning anything from there. Then it would say meitav sedeh, meitav karmi yishalem b'stei acher. That how should you pay as opposed to stei acher? But it doesn't say stei acher there. It says stei acher by the story. It says ubir b'stei acher. Then it tells you how to pay. So the fact that it's in the foul part of the mikra, just like we learned the Mishnah has a mikra and a din, every pasuk, the psukim also can have the mikra and the din. Because it says b'stei acher in the mikra part of the pasuk, it is here to also, it's teaching me two things. On one hand, it's here to teach me where the animal ate, and on the other hand, from the interesting language of stei acher versus stei chaveira, or the b'stei acher, it's also able to teach me how to pay. So it's able to do both. Because of where in the pasuk it is and how it's written. And the where and the how, it's able to do both. Back to Gemara, we're going to try to go to Ahu. Yeah, we're not trying. We have 5 minutes. We're going to go to Ahu Gabra. We have at least 5 minutes. Gemara will get a drop complicated in a minute, but we'll end with that. Back to Gemara, we're holding by Heichi Shamin. If we had enough Shema Minat Harti, we learn out two things from this pasuk. Fine. Back to Gemara, Heichi Shamina. Meaning the Mishnah said that you pay, you look at a base sa'ah. But the Gemara wants to know how do you actually do that? Like how do you look at the base sa'ah, right? So Heichi Shamina, how do you shots it up? So Am Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina, sa'ah b'shishim sa'ah. Even one sa'ah, you look at it as if it was being sold with 60 sa'ah. Just keep your finger on the place. I want to explain it. Rashi explains. I'll give you a mashal. Imagine here in Crown Heights, every house is worth $5 million, right? So the average person can't get their hands on a house, and then you have like a little co-op going for sale. So all of a sudden, a lot of people be like, I want to own a property, I want to own a property. So that co-op is going to be overpriced because there's so many buyers and there's so many people that they're excluded from the whole real estate market that that's all that they could afford. And they're going to be desperate to try to own property. So they're all going to offer a higher price than it's worth on this little, co-op, little condo, right? That makes sense. So Rashi says the same thing is with the fields that, usually when you buy fields, you buy like, a lot of saw, 30 saw, 60 saw, whatever, a big amount. You don't buy a little saw 50 by 50. So, but if a 50 by 50 piece of saw ever goes for sale, it's actually overpriced because all of a sudden all the aniyim want to be like, I want to get into the real estate market. This is what they can afford. And they're all coming to buy it, right? Well,
4x4.
yeah, exactly, right. There they talk to make a good living. So, so therefore, it's not fair to look at how much does a saw sell for. If you look at how much a saw sells for, a saw sells for more money than it's worth, and I'm hurting the mazik now and making him pay more. Because looking at the price of a saw is a not fair price. So even the saw of our Mishnah, that you're supposed to look at the saw, how much it would sell for or not. How do you price the saw itself? One saw is 60. 60 saw is like normal amount of saw to be sold together. So that's what this opinion is. That you look at saw b'shishim saw. Rabbi Yanai argues, he says half the amount. He says, tarkav b'shishim tarkavim. Now a tarkav is a half a saw. So shishim tarkavim is 60 half saws. So he basically holds 1 in 30. If you look at a sa'ah as if it was part of 30. He just wanted to follow the language of shishim. There's going to be a three-way machlekes here. Everybody's going to hold shishim. What? No, you look at a sa'ah, how much the saw would sell before it was damaged, and how much it sold after it's damaged. But how do you price the saw itself? Make believe this is my saw, right? And the animal ate up all the corn over here. So I say that you have to see how much would this saw sell with the corn and without the corn. But how do I know the price of the saw itself? So the first opinion is you have to see this saw as if it was part of a sale of 60 saw. The second opinion is you have to look at it as if this was part of a half a saw in 60 halves. In other words, 1 saw in 30. Because he holds that that's considered a more reasonable amount to look at. So tarka b'shishim tarkabim, which is 1 in 30. And Chizkiya holds that kelach b'shishim klachim, you just look at the piece that was damaged. This is the one that's hard to reconcile with the wording of the Mishnah. We're not getting into that, but Chizkiya holds you look at the actual piece that was damaged, you times it by 60. However much was damaged, you look at a piece of land that was 60 times that amount. That's how you shots up. So there's a three-way machlekes of how do heichi shaminan, how do you shots up the value? Either 1 saw in 60 saw, 1 saw in 30, which is 1 tarkav and 60 tarkavim, or a kelach b'shishim klachim. Correct the Gemara, Meisvei, we're going to have a kasha from a brisa. But this brisa, it's going to appear that you don't do b'shishim. All these, and this question is going to be on all 3 opinions. It's not like Sometimes after you have a machlekes and you bring a meisvei, we're asking one of the opinions. And there are Mefarshim who actually learn that this meisvei can maybe be only on one of the opinions, but that's not the Pashut of Pshat. The Pashut of Pshat is, and Rashi's way is, that this meisvei is right now going to be, Rashi says, v'kasha lekulhu. So Rashi's Bavarni, because it's actually unusual. All of a sudden, we're going to bring a meisvei on all three opinions. What's this brisa going to be essentially saying? It's going to look like from this brisa that when the animal damages, you look at just the damage. And here they all agree shishim. We don't see the concept of shishim. So it's going to be a kash on them. They're going to say, no, the brisa meant shishim. That's what the answer will be. So let's do that inside. Meisvei, the bnei yeshiva, I'm gefrekt the kasha. Achla kav, if an animal ate a kav, a kabayim or two kav. By the way, if you just want to get into all the measurements, I'll say it once. A kav is a very, very tiny measurement. 6 kav go into a sa'ah. I actually brought it with me, cards. I don't mix it up myself. I have it over here. A kav is a very, very small measurement. And then 6 kav go into a sa'ah. 6 kav go into one sa'ah. And a kur, which is a very large amount, a kur is, oh, you have it in the back of your Gemaras there? Where do you have it? Oh, very nice, right over there, okay. So a kur, if you see a kur is 30 sa'ah, or 180 kabim. You see that on the top line where it says kur? So one kur is 30 sa'ah, which is 180 kabim. The 6 kav, if you go down to the line where it says kav, you'll see what? Yeah. 6 kav go into a sa'ah. 6 kav go into a sa'ah, and which makes, so you have a kav, then you have 3 kavim, which is a tar kav, which is a half a sa'ah, right? We have this measurement called tar kav, which is half a sa'ah. It's 3 kavim. 6 kavim make a sa'ah, and then 30 sa'ah is going to make a what's called a kur. So, anyways, our mission over here. Let's go back to our brisa. Our brisa says that achla kav a kavayim. If it ate a kav or kavayim, which is a very small amount, so the brisa says ein aimrim tisham demei, and you don't pay just that one kav or just those 2 kav. You don't look at that little piece of what it ate. You don't charge it for itself. However, we look at the whole piece of land over there. And you shots it up. But it doesn't say anywhere that you do the b'shishim. So my love, so then doesn't this Mishnah play atzma? He shots it up for it itself. You says you shouldn't look at just the kav or kavayim, but you should look at the whole aruga. But it doesn't say you should do b'shishim. So my love, atzma. B'shishim. It means the Mishnah didn't say it, but it means b'shishim. And it's not a kasha in any of our opinions. Let's learn another tiny little piece over here. It's a drop of a complicated piece, and then when we come back next week, it's a whole new sugya. We're going to learn dahu gavra, and we're going to talk about a whole sugya about if an animal damages or if a person damages. Over here, there's a massive leniency that we just learned today. That even when you pay mashizika, which is the higher rate, right? Mashizika is according to the field, and the field itself according to Beis Son. The Beis Son itself at 60 saw or 30 saw. Torah is letting you get away with murder. In other words, we're giving you the Torah is trying to give a very balanced fair rate. Ultimately, we're pretty nice to the mazik over here. You could really look at it another way.
What's this for here?
That's what the Torah is. That's what the Torah considers fair. The mazik you pay, but there's different ways to look at it. We look at it for the mazik a more lenient way. The next sugya after the Ahu Gavra is going to get into what's if a person damages? Do we also do the shishim thing or do we not do the shishim thing?
Maybe an animal.
There's a person who says mamish b'yadayim, maybe an animal. Okay, you didn't do it on purpose. You were meant to watch your animal and you didn't. But it's not beina right if you go and you break down the guy's house with your own hands. So that will be the whole next sugya. So right now we have a little. I know we're drop over time. It's a little bit of a complicated piece, but we'll just finish it off. So we'll be holding Ahu Gavra for next time. So we're holding over here. Taner Rabbanan. Taner Rabbanan. We learned in the brisa that this brisa is going to talk about what's the din if an animal ate a kav, which is it appears to be saying what's the din if an animal ate a kav, which is a tiny amount, or if it ate a kur, which is 30 saw, right, which is a large amount. So the brisa says like as follows. It's not so clear. The brisa says, "Ein shamin kav." You don't estimate a kav, seemingly by itself, because you're making it better. You're making it more expensive. You're making him get more money than he should. Below base kur, and you don't look at a whole base kur, which is 30 saw, because you're making it worse for him. So we don't know exactly what the Brisa says. That's all the Brisa says. This quote, Ein Shamin Kav, Pesha Mashbichai, Lebeskur, Pesha Paigai. So what is Pshat? So frankly, my camera, what is this Brisa saying? So Rav Papa offers the following explanation. Amar Rav Papa, the Brisa is saying as follows. Haki Kamar, this is what the Brisa means to say. Ein Shamin Kav, Bishishim Kabim. When it comes to a Kav, don't look at a Kav in Shishim Kabim, Mipnei Shemashbiach, Mazik, because you're making the Mazik gain. Why are you making the Mazik gain? Why are you making the Mazik gain? The reason why you're making the Mazik gain when you look at a Kav in 60 Kabim, because a field of 60 Kabim doesn't sell. It doesn't sell. It's actually too much for the Ani. Before we spoke about it, if it's very small, all the Anim are after it. This is too big for the Ani, but it's way too small for even a Beinani and Kol Shekid for an Usher. So for Usher, they're not going to look at it. Even a Beinani won't look at it. Ani, it's out of his league. It's somewhere over there in between. So this thing doesn't sell. So if somebody tries to sell 60 Kabim, over there, what happens is the price is underpriced. The price is underpriced because nobody wants to touch this property, and you don't have all the Aniyim after it either. So over there, it actually goes below value. So Rav Papa is explaining when the Brisa said Ein Shamin Kav, it meant to say don't do 1 Kav and 16 Kavim. Mipnei Shemashbiach, he meant to say that the Mazik will gain, because in that case the Mazik is getting a cheap price because 60 Kavim sell for very cheap because there's no buyers for 60 Kavim. That's how he explains that, and then he explains that the Brisa is saying a second din. The second part of the Brisa was V'loi Kur b'Shishim Kurim. A Kur don't either do in Shishim Kurim. Mipnei Shepaygim Mazik, because then you're making it hard for the Mazik, because a Kur is 30 Sa'ah. So Shishim Kurim is a tremendous amount. And for somebody who's very wealthy, they'd love to get their hands on a huge property like that. So they're willing to overpay for such a property. Because it's so big, it's amazing to own such a property. So when it comes to Kur, don't look at 60 Kur, because you're making it too expensive for the Mazik, because 60 Kur sells for a lot of money, like more than it should have, because people want to get their hands in it. When it comes to 60 Kab, you're making it hard for the Mazik, because you're making it better for the Mazik, because no one buys it, so it sells for really cheap. So he basically explains this price as saying two dinim, the din of a Kav in 60 Kav, and Kur in 60 Kur. One of them both of them you don't do for different reasons, right? Both of them you don't do. The Kav in 60 Kav you don't do because that field of 60 Kav sells for under value, and you don't do a Kur in 60 Kur because that field of 60 Kur is overpriced. So that's how Papa wants to explain this Brisa. So we have one problem with that. We have a problem with the language. If that's what the Brisa was saying, then the Brisa, look back at the Brisa. Taner Rabbanim, it said Ein Shamin Kav Meshbichai, V'loi Base Kur Mipnei Shepaygmai. Why did it say the word base Kur? It should have just said Kur. Ain't Shamin Kav, and you're saying Kav means don't do a Kav in 60 Kav, then it should have said V'loi Kur into 60 Kur. Why over there does it say base Kur? Doesn't seem like the Mishnah is just saying like the same thing twice. Like once about a Kav, once about a Kur. There's a little bit of a different language here. So Mask, Rav Bar Menayach asks on Rav Papa, Hi V'loi Beis Kur. What are you going to do with the language of V'loi Beis Kur? V'loi Kur mi Ba'alei. According to you, it should have just said V'loi Kur. So therefore, he's going to offer his own explanation, and we're going to end over here with tonight, right over here. Therefore, and for the Gemara, Ela Rav Bar Menayach offers this explanation. Mishmei de Rav Acha B'rei Ravika, in the name of Rav Acha, the son of Ravika. Hachi Katani. This is what the Brisa meant to say. Ein Shamin Kav Mifnei Atzmai. When it said Ein Shamin Kav, it means don't look at a Kav by itself, the little piece of Kav. Mipnei Shemashbiach Nizik. Over here, we're referring to the Nizik, because the Nizik is going to gain. Because remember, if you look at just the potatoes or just the piece that it ate, it's going to be very expensive. You're not supposed to look at it that way. So you don't look at a Kav Mipnei Atzmai Mipnei Shemashbiach Nizik, because then the Nizik is going to gain. In other words, the Mazik is going to lose. He's going to have to pay more than he's supposed to. V'loi Kav. It's not talking about. Now we're talking about a Kav. This price is talking about one case. It's talking about that you ate a Kav. How do you pay it? You don't pay it by Fnei Atzmai, but you don't either take a Kav and put a Kav into a base Kur. A base Kur, which is I think 30 Kur, which is each Kur is 30 Sa'ah. That's like ridiculous, because then it's worth nothing at all, right? If you have a $5 million house, it's missing one window, it's actually no difference in value. You're going to go on the walkthrough on the day of the closing, and you come to the closing table, you're not going to get $1 off the sale price because you found the broken window at a walkthrough. Like, it's worth nothing at all. So that's what this price is saying. You don't look at a Kav by itself, but you don't either look at a Kav in a base Kur. What's the number? The number is that we learned. You look at it in a base Sa'ah, which is in 30 Sa'ah. That's what this price means. Ein shamin kav v'fnei atzma and pnei shemashbiach nizik. The matzah will have to overpay in that case. Well, like kav base core, you don't put a kav in a base core. Misha paygim nizik. Ela b'shishin. You do it the way we described before. Let's say according to the first opinion, what that would look like is you look at a saw and then how much the saw itself is worth in 60 saw. That's the proper way to look at it. But you don't go the kav as opposed to all. You don't take the kav and say this kav, how much is it in 30 saw? You take this kav, how much is it in one saw? But that saw itself, how much is it in 30 saw? This concludes tonight's shiur. The next time we come back, we have Ahu Gavra, and we get into that whole sugya that we discussed. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Next time, schedule that.